Karen, just a heads up. We're pivoting your role to something more aligned with the new org vision, the CTO said, scratching his neck like the words were giving him a rash. His lips moved, but all she heard was static. Her stomach dropped faster than the QA environment Brendan once nuked trying to optimize performance. She knew something was off the second she saw the performance review booked on a Friday, sandwiched between a 2:00 p.m. culture sync and a 4:00 p.m. team mindfulness. Nobody got promoted after lunch. That was the unspoken rule in this glass-walled madhouse they called an office. Karen had walked in with a 42-slide deck showing year-over-year conversion rates, funnel acceleration charts, and a chart titled Pipeline Resilience during Brendan-induced incidents. She even color-coded the shit. Green for when she fixed it, red for when she wasn't allowed to. And yet there she was, structured, not promoted, not even lateral, downshifted to support engineering liaison. A title so meaningless it practically came with a manual on how to be forgotten in Slack. Leadership opportunity, they called it. Mentorship pathway. They handed her platform, her code, her sleepless weekends, her duct-taped miracles, to Brendan, the corporate mascot for male mediocrity. The same guy who once asked if semicolons were optional in JSON. Karen didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She let them talk, nodded at the right places, smiled when the HR rep dropped the phrase stretch potential, and when the slide deck transitioned to a pixelated stock photo of two people high-fiving under the caption New Chapter, same team, Karen's eye twitched once. Just once. She stood, shook their hands, walked out of the room, down 3 flights of stairs to the parking lot, because she needed gravity to help keep her rage from leaking out her ears. In her car, with the engine off and heat bleeding through the windows, she stared into the sun. Her fingers drummed against the steering wheel. Her laptop sat in the passenger seat like a silent co-conspirator. And then she remembered something. They hadn't revoked her access. She hadn't been pulled from the Slack channel for back-end infra. Her admin credentials, still valid, the keys to the castle hers. Because in their rush to screw her over, they'd forgotten the one thing Karen had never forgotten in her life. Check your permissions before burning bridges. Hey, if you're still with me, do me a favor. I'm trying to hit my first 10,000 subscribers ever. You'd be making my day just clicking that little subscribe button. It's free, no awkward performance reviews attached, I promise. Anyway, that night, she poured herself 2 inches of bourbon, opened her terminal, and logged into the staging server. Not to sabotage, not yet, just watching. Inside the logs, she saw Brendan's first commits. He'd forked her repo into a folder labeled Karen Old and started pushing UI tweaks directly into main. No tests, no versioning, like someone spray painting graffiti on a cathedral. A commit message read, fixing legacy junk lol. She took a screenshot, then another. Then she started something new. A blank repo, clean, untouched, off-network, hosted on her own encrypted container outside their corporate cloud. She named it Mirror One. Karen wasn't going to play support. She wasn't going to be a team player. She was going to rebuild her entire system from the ground up, quietly, legally, brilliantly. And this time it was going to be hers, only hers, no high fives, no laminated HR pamphlets, just war. Quiet, slow-burning, brilliantly coded war. They scheduled the transition sync at 8:30 a.m. sharp, like betrayal tastes better with stale office coffee. Karen showed up early. Brendan, naturally, arrived 9 minutes late with a smoothie the color of nuclear waste, and the energy of a man who thought Figma was a Pokemon. Yo, Karen, he grinned, already booting up his MacBook with 17 desktop icons blinking like landmines. Excited to get your wisdom, Sensei, Karen resisted the urge to launch him into the drywall. Instead, she opened the doc she'd been forced to create, a knowledge transfer journal that was now 37 pages deep and growing more passive-aggressive by the hour. Page 1 was titled, Please do not delete this file. Page 2 read, Seriously, Brendan. Management framed the ordeal as a mentorship opportunity, said with all the chirpy insincerity of someone recommending kale chips at a funeral. CTO dropped buzzwords like leadership grooming and cross-functional synergy. What it really meant was, train the idiot who stole your seat and smile while doing it. Every morning that week, Karen sat across from Brendan in a meeting room that smelled faintly of sadness and old Panera. She demoed systems he didn't understand and concepts he couldn't pronounce. So wait, Brendan squinted at her monitor. These async hooks are like optional, right? Like your parachute, Karen replied flatly. Technically optional, until you're falling. Brendan laughed like she was joking. Karen wasn't. By day 3, he was still asking what a cron job was. She began writing a second set of notes, off the books, encrypted, saved in a private Git instance she spun up in her garage at 2 a.m. while eating leftover tie straight from the foil. These notes were for her, not for Brendan, not for the company, just her. Included all the undocumented workarounds, the skeleton keys she'd built into the back end, the one weird trick that made the auto-scaling logic actually scale. Brendan's version? Sanitized. Sanitized like a kindergarten bathroom during flu season. Every time he swaggered into her cube and said, "Hey, so quick Q, what's the diff between environment variables and hard-coded paths?" She died a little more inside. It wasn't just that he was incompetent, it was that they knew and still chose him. Because Brendan was easier to manage. Because Brendan didn't challenge dumb ideas or raise red flags when someone suggested using a Chrome extension to streamline security. Karen's pride didn't just take a hit. It got backed over by a company-sponsored e-scooter. But she didn't lash out. She didn't call anyone names. She simply started running nightly backups of her original system, quietly, methodically, aiming the folders after mundane things like holiday pictures 2023 and cat vaccination records. Each ZIP file was a time capsule of the clean, functioning system she'd spent years perfecting. Every variable she renamed, every hook she annotated, every session she logged in both places, Brendan's clown notes and her real ones. By Friday, Brendan had overwritten the CSS preprocessor and somehow crashed the sandbox dashboard by importing a node module's folder into itself. Karen nodded, wrote it down, and kept her mouth shut. Let them break it. Let them paint it in pastel gradients and post it on LinkedIn with the caption "New Era, Same Values." Let them brag about agility while the wheels fell off. Karen had already started building hers again, offline, off books, untouchable. Every time Brendan muttered this code's kind of messy, she smiled just a little wider. Messy? We'll see how messy things get. The dashboard now had gradients. Gradients. Brendan had somehow convinced the product team that launch success hinged on vibrant visual storytelling. So he jammed a tick-tock-colored UI into the clean, utilitarian interface Karen had spent 2 years optimizing for speed and clarity. Buttons that used to say submit now said let's go, in lowercase cursive. The onboarding progress bar had confetti animations, on mobile, at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday. Meanwhile, her backend, started coughing like an old truck in February. Data syncing scripts lagged. PDF bundles failed to generate. The onboarding logic she'd modularized had been restructured by Brendan for flow, meaning it now called the wrong endpoint half the time and duplicated entries when it didn't outright crash. Bug tickets multiplied like cockroaches in a Motel 6 wall. Internal Slack lit up red. The QA team, ironically, started flagging criticals that Brendan kept marking non-blocking, so he could keep chasing color palettes instead of fixing core logic. Karen watched it all from the sidelines like a firefighter forced to stand and clap while her house was handed to a chainsaw juggler. The first quick favor email hit her inbox Thursday. Then another. By Monday, she was up to 14. Some were obvious panic. "Hey Karen, sorry to bother. Do you know why the customer success module is dumping plain text passwords into the error logs?" Brendan thinks it's a race condition. Some were desperate attempts at denial. Just checking in, not urgent, but weird that the dashboard now shows undefined where the client name should be. Could you maybe peek? And one, her favorite, was from Brendan himself. "Yo lol, think the server is throttling. Can't tell if that's intentional or like a Karen thing." She didn't answer a single one. She was not on that team anymore. That's what the VP of engineering had said, in a meeting, in front of others. As if her memory, her skill set, her blood and sweat and 3 a.m. code deployments were just dust in the Jira wind. So she let the silence build, like pressure behind drywall, like a hairline crack in the gas main. Her only contribution, quietly updating her mirror system with every failure she observed. The malformed JSON outputs, the timeout errors, the Git commits labeled hotfix final realithisone. All of it, logged, timestamped, archived, not out of spite, out of obligation, to her own integrity, to the thing she actually built. And still there was sorrow, a low, humming ache she couldn't shut off, because this was her legacy. This system had carried her through a breakup, through 3 funerals, through pandemic isolation, through the kind of loneliness only late-stage capitalism could engineer. It was the thing that reminded her she mattered. Now it was bleeding out on the conference room table while a boy in all birds played doctor. Still, beneath the sorrow, something else coiled in her chest. Not anger, not even bitterness, satisfaction, because she knew where this train was headed, and she wasn't on it. Maybe you were never really senior engineer material. That's what the VP said, casually, over limp chicken wraps in the break room, as if he were commenting on the weather or the office playlist. Like her entire career was just a case of mistaken identity. Karen stood there with a plastic fork midair, staring at the wilted lettuce, while the word never echoed like a fire alarm inside her skull. The VP didn't even look at her when he said it, just kept scrolling his phone, sipping his green juice like it tasted better than the silence he left in his wake. The never wasn't what hurt most. It was the fact that he meant it. Somewhere between Brendan's refactors and Karen's polite exile to tech support purgatory, they'd rewritten her story. Turned her from architect to appendix, a leftover part they didn't know what to do with, so they just decided to cut her out. Then came Brendan's internal blog, bringing velocity to onboarding, a postmortem on pre-launch optimization. Bold title for someone who just found out what a dependency tree was 2 weeks ago. Karen skimmed the post with clinical precision. Paragraph 1, all buzzwords, zero meaning. Paragraph 2, a detailed breakdown of legacy inefficiencies he streamlined. Paragraph 3, a photo of Brendan pointing at a whiteboard with her architecture diagram behind him, cropped just enough to cut out her initials from the footer. He wrote about modularization, asynchronous task handling, load balancing, tech he didn't understand, let alone implement. She knew because she was the one who had built it. Alone, in silence, with coffee breath, eye bags, and a spine shaped like a question mark from hunching over her desk during 2 consecutive Thanksgivings. And now this floppy-haired clown was getting shout-outs in the leadership Slack. Karen didn't rage. She didn't reply, didn't call anyone out. She just smiled, walked calmly back to her desk, opened her encrypted container, and double-clicked a local instance of the system. It ran like a dream, sleek, stable, everything still where it belonged, untouched by Brendan's cartoonish design instincts or management's strategic amnesia. She called it Keystone, because without it, everything else would fall. She hadn't planned to do anything with it at first. It was her security blanket, her proof of life. A reminder that she wasn't crazy, that the mess unfolding around her wasn't her fault. Brilliance doesn't die just because someone else has the mic. But then a thought flickered. Not revenge, not even payback, precision. There was a certain poetry in letting them fall by their own hand. But what if she handed someone else a parachute? What if, instead of salvaging the train wreck, she built a faster train? Her old mentor once told her, don't fight a system designed to erase you. Outbuild it. So Karen began sketching outlines. Quietly. Strategically. For lunchtime in her car, during mindfulness breaks, she spent watching their bug tracker hemorrhage red flags. She pulled old contacts from her encrypted phone, asked careful questions, got careful answers. A storm was coming, not the kind with lightning, the kind you don't hear until it's already overhead. The first sign was subtle. A Slack message buried in a thread no one reads. Hey, anyone else seeing weird storage spikes in staging? Then came the CPU alerts, first ignored, then silenced. Must be a logging hiccup, Brendan chirped. I tweaked the handler to be more verbose. Verbose was an understatement. Brendan's patch to the backend script had uncorked a digital fire hose, dumping uncompressed logs into the main storage bucket like a toddler flinging Legos into a bathtub. Every page render, every click, every whitespace event was being tracked in real time, with timestamps, and full payloads, and user data. Karen noticed because one of her old staging alerts, something she'd written back when the system still had guardrails, pinged her personal inbox. A ghost from a version of the code that still knew how to scream when it hurt. She watched the logs bloat, watched the disks crawl toward capacity, and sipped her tea, chamomile, with honey. By midweek, staging was crashing twice a day. DevOps was duct-taping instances like madmen in a house built of wet cardboard. Logs folder alone was eating into production memory. And Brendan, bless his heart, couldn't figure out why user uploads were getting rejected, or why the form builder randomly replaced dropdowns with null. Executives, cool as cucumbers at an HR barbecue. It's fine, the VP of product said during the Thursday all-hands, brushing away the charts like fruit flies. We'll patch post-launch. What matters is hitting the demo deadline. Perception is everything. Perception? Karen filed that one away. That same day, she got an urgent request from her old team lead. The subject line, "Need your eyes on onboarding, support help during rollout." She read it twice. Sipped, read it again. Then typed a one-line reply, "Thanks, but I'm not on that team anymore." No anger, no flourish. Just a gentle reminder of the knife they'd already buried. She deleted the follow-up ping, opened her alternate licensing draft, and got back to work. The agreement was almost done, tight, enforceable, and blessed by a lawyer who owed her a favor from back when she caught a flaw in his firm's billing software. The terms were simple. Her mirror platform, Keystone, would be offered to select clients under exclusive, non-transferable usage rights. No shared code. No shared infrastructure. Clean slate. She already had interest. Quiet ping from a former partner, now CTO at a rival firm. "We're not impressed with their current rollout," he wrote. "Would love to see your version." She kept the reply short. "Let's talk Monday. I'll bring the clean build." By now, she barely flinched when Slack blew up. Someone tagged her in a public thread at Karen Quick Question. Any idea why new signups are generating blank PDFs again? She ignored it. Instead, she reviewed her final checklist, DNS set. Auth flow rebuilt from scratch. Cloud deployment pipeline tested and air-gapped. Documentation triple-proofed her documentation, not Brendan's blog core nonsense. Theirs was crumbling under its own weight. Hers, silent, sharp, ready. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't even sad. Karen had simply moved on. And soon the rest of the world would too, by 4:00 p.m. Friday. War drums had gone silent. Not because the bugs were fixed, God no. Because they were too many to name, too chaotic to track, too fast to catch before the next one spawned. It was like trying to plug a dam with a fistful of spaghetti noodles. And yet, the official Slack thread still bore its name like a crown. #prelaunch hype. Karen watched from her corner seat in a half-empty bar 6 blocks from HQ, bourbon neat in front of her, on screen glowing like a campfire. She scrolled through the slow-motion implosion as Brendan, bless his half-baked soul, led what was optimistically called a launch readiness dry run. At 3:37 p.m., someone posted the first red flag. Form PDF not rendering client name, shows null user .42. Happens in both Firefox and Chrome. At 3:38, onboarding links now trigger 502 on refresh. At 3:39, Brendan replied, definitely a rendering glitch. Probably a caching thing. Talk to Dylan. Dylan was a junior front-end dev who hadn't been on the onboarding flow at all. Brendan just needed a scapegoat with no political currency. Karen took a sip and smiled into her glass. This wasn't anger. This wasn't triumph. This was weather. A calm, barometric drop right before the lightning hits your spine. She didn't need to gloat. Reality was doing that for her. Phone buzzed again. Screenshot from an old teammate. The PDF module, one Brendan claimed he'd simplified for performance, was now sending files with raw template code visible in the final render. Instead of a formatted client welcome packet, new signups were receiving things like first name, welcome to the platform. Please verify your email token. One sales rep had already emailed marketing. Is this a joke? Client asked if this was some kind of phishing test. Karen watched the thread balloon into a Slack-shaped landfill. 37 messages in 9 minutes. Brendan responding with fire emojis and links to random Stack Overflow threads he didn't understand. One VP asked if they could roll back to the legacy version, unaware that Brendan had overwritten it entirely last week in a cleanup push. The lights in the bar dimmed for happy hour. Her drink got warm. He didn't check her email. Instead, she unlocked her encrypted drive and opened Keystone. Flawless, clean PDF render, proper auth tokens, signed cookies, the onboarding path smooth as buttered glass. She ran a test instance on a virtual client, just one, not for validation, for archiving. Then she toggled the passive logger she'd built into Keystone. Begin archival mode, launch day 0000. It would run silently, watching, recording, logging every inconsistency the official system leaked into the wild. Not intercepting, just witnessing. Every malformed response, every timeout, every postmortem waiting to happen, because Karen wasn't going to burn it down. She was going to let it drown in its own ignorance. At 6:12 p.m., Slack exploded again. Internal users can't access onboarding anymore unless they're in admin mode. WTF? Brendan replied. Karen probably left some legacy logic in there. Working on it now. Karen stared at those words for a long time. Then she closed Slack, flagged the message, and renamed the screenshot Blame Protocol 01. PNG no rage, no revenge playlist. Just a mental note, final proof. That night, as her old team scrambled into overtime, Karen sat alone, a slow grin curling on her lips, not for what was happening, but for what was about to. Launch day arrived dressed like a funeral in startup drag. The office was buzzing by 6 a.m. Half-calf lattes, branded hoodies, sticky notes slapped across monitors like war paint. Brendan wore a t-shirt that read code, deploy, dominate, and acted like it was his Super Bowl. Someone queued up a playlist titled Launch Vibes Only. At 7 o'clock a.m. sharp, the new platform went live. By 7:03, it was already coughing blood. Onboarding froze. Not slowed, froze. Clients clicked Start Now and were met with spinners that never stopped spinning. PDF packets arrived blank if they arrived at all. The live CRM data was syncing backwards, pulling stale entries and overriding fresh leads with outdated info. At 7:08, the first fire alarm hit support. Big client says their entire onboarding doc shows someone else's data. Names, emails, everything. At 7:10, why are user IDs mapping to the wrong accounts? At 7:12, Karen, are you seeing this? But Karen wasn't in the building. She was sitting in a corner booth at Milla's Diner, 3 miles away, wearing sunglasses indoors and nursing a mug of burnt coffee. The waitress, bless her, didn't ask questions. Just refilled her cup and slid over the laminated dessert menu like she knew Karen was mourning something no one could see. Phone buzzed like a trapped bee on the table. Slack was hemorrhaging. A 130-message pileup in #launch support. Sales reps were tagging everyone with a pulse. DevOps was spinning in circles. Someone uploaded a screenshot of the admin dashboard showing a total onboarding completion rate of 3%. 3%. And then came the voice calls. Executives screaming into Zoom like hostages in a Wi-Fi war zone. Who built this script? Where's the failover? Is anyone even logging this? Where the hell is Karen? That one popped up 4 times, in Slack, in Teams, even as a voicemail. Karen didn't answer. She flagged them all and silently archived each notification like she was folding memories into a shoebox. She scrolled through screenshots of broken templates, Slack quotes blaming legacy, Karen logic, and Brendan's increasingly panicked updates. Just a hiccup in the config files, deploying a hotfix in 10. 7:32, a junior dev pinged the CTO privately and leaked it 2 minutes later. We can't even trace the failure point. There are 6 nested patches on top of each other. No one knows what Brendan actually changed. Karen smiled, not cruelly, not smug, like someone watching the tide come in exactly as the moon promised it would. She signaled the waitress. I'll take the cherry pie. Warmed up, please, she said. It's a big day. Her phone lit up again. It's time from HR. The subject line, urgent availability request. She closed it without opening. Because somewhere across town, people were scrambling over the ruins of what used to be her work, her structure, her scaffolding. And they were finally realizing the foundation had been pulled weeks ago, quietly, carefully, without them even noticing. And now they were screaming for the only person who could have saved them. But Karen wasn't coming. She had pie. She had silence. She had no interest in rebuilding what they were so eager to throw away. Karen was halfway through her second bite of cherry pie, still warm, crust flaking just right, when her phone buzzed softly on the vinyl tabletop. Subject, final signature received body, contract executed. Welcome aboard, Keystone is now live. She exhaled, slow. The kind of breath you only let go when you've been holding your entire self in for 3 years straight. She tapped the screen once, opened the attached PDF, and scrolled through signatures like a surgeon reviewing clean vitals after a risky operation. All there. Every clause, every safeguard, every comma she'd triple-checked. Her mirror system, Keystone, was now the core onboarding platform for the largest competitor her former employer had ever feared. An exclusivity clause signed, sealed, and delivered, which meant her old company couldn't license it, couldn't copy it, even approach anything similar, without risking a lawsuit so sharp it would make their general counsel cry into his branded Patagonia vest. She stirred her coffee, let the silence sink in. Slack was still pinging in the background, but she'd muted it 20 minutes ago. There were still threads begging for answers, theories being floated, postmortems already half-written, while Brendan blamed legacy formatting conflicts and tried to deploy a rollback he didn't understand. Too late? At 8:13 a.m. She opened her inbox one last time and composed a single email to HR. Subject, request for availability per my updated NDA clause. All further contacts should be directed to legal. Regards, Karen. She hit send, closed the laptop, and sat there watching the diner hum around her like the world was finally spinning at the right speed again. The waitress returned, offered more coffee. Celebrating something? She asked. Karen smiled. Yeah, I finally quit a job I wasn't allowed to leave. The woman nodded like she understood more than she let on. Hell of a thing. Across town, her old company was having the worst morning of its fiscal year. Client escalations, refund demands, marketing in full PR scramble mode. And in one boardroom, a whiteboard now bore the hastily scribbled phrase, mitigating key person risk. Someone had finally said it. Out loud. Too late, of course, but still, it made its way into the minutes. They'd finally realized what they lost. And Karen didn't need an apology. She didn't need applause or headlines or petty revenge. She just needed the quiet, the clean code, the signed contract, the system that would never carry Brendan's fingerprints. And pie. God, the pie was good. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.